Well, hi there. Here we are in Run Math mode. The math stands for matrices, an area of math you'll investigate a bit later on. Our first step is to set up run mode so that it produces answers in the form we want. Let's do that by going to the brain of the calculator. So firstly hit Shift in here, followed by Menu button here, and then you will see that enters the setup mode of the calculator. If you do that, you'll then see this screen, and as you can see there, highlighted is the input-output line, and that has got math entered there. This setup for run mode will in simple terms always give us the exact mathematical answers to our calculations. The alternative is linear mode, which is down here, where the answers will be given basically as decimals. I want you to select math mode by hitting F1. It may already be selected, but if it's not, you can actually select it, because straight under there is F1, which will select math mode. And then I want you to hit execute so that we can return to the run mode ready to do some calculations. Here we are back in run mode, and I'd like you to work out the exact value of the square root of 2. Now the square root is the opposite to squaring, so I think we can find that on here. So there's the squaring button. So if we hit Shift here and then the square button, you'll see that we can access that little square root sign in there. So I want you to do that and then hit 2 on the keypad, followed by execute. So we're working out the square root of 2. If you do that, what happens up here? Well, that's interesting. We have entered in the square root of 2, and the calculator has said the answer is the square root of 2. The reason for that is, in math mode, the calculator will produce the exact mathematical form, and root 2 has an infinite number of decimal places, so this can never be written down in exact form. So we leave it as the square root of 2 as the only exact form for that number. Now let's look at linear mode. So I want you to hit Shift followed by Menu. That takes us into the setup. I want you to change the math setup to linear by hitting F2 and then execute. And let's have a look at what the calculator has to offer when it gives us a 10 digits of play for the value of root 2. So I want you to work out the square root of 2 in linear mode, and there it is there. The calculator has given us a full 10 digit display of the square root of 2. It's had to stop at the 9th decimal place, so it's not exact. Right, now let's look at doing some work with some fractions. I want you to go back and change the setup to math mode again. Remember what to do now, hitting Shift followed by Menu, so that enters setup. And then if you change it to math mode, you will hit F1 and then hit execute, and we'll be back in the run mode in math form. Now I want you to do the addition of 2 fractions first of all. So the 2 fractions we're going to work with is 3/4 and 2/3. We're going to add those 2 fractions up. 3/4 plus 2/3. So to do that, what I'd like you to first of all do is to hit 3 divided by 4, so that's our 3/4, then plus 2 in here, divided by, again, 3. And if you do that, you then to hit execute. And what have we got? Well, that's interesting. Here's our answer, but as you can see, the decimals would have kept going. But the calculator has, even in math mode, given us just a 10-digit display. I want you to do the same calculation, but entering it in a slightly different form. So we're going to do the same thing again, 3/4 plus 2/3, but the way in which we're going to enter the fractions will be different. Okay, so we're going to use this key here, the fraction key. So we'll enter 3/4 by 3 fraction key 4. So that will be this fraction entered plus our fraction 2/3 to, again, fraction key 3. That enters our 2/3. Then if we push execute, we'll have our answer. Oh, now this is interesting. So we have the fractions entered completely as fractions, and the answer is also given as the exact fraction, 17/12. So math mode does actually have a way in which to display the addition of fractions in exact mathematical form. Now let's go back and do the same thing using the linear setup. So I want you to hit Shift again, followed by Menu, because that gives us the setup. And this time I want you to select F2 to change the setup to linear, and then hit Execute to return to run mode. Right, well, let's look at what the fraction work looks like in the linear setup. So let's enter 3/4 plus 2/3 again using the approach 3 divided by 4, and then plus 2 divided by 3, followed by execute. Well, this is interesting. Linear setup has produced exactly the same answer when we enter the fractions in this form. Now let's try using the fraction key in the linear setup as we did before. So our problem is 3/4 plus 2/3. So here we go. We will go 3 fraction key 4. So that enters our 3/4 plus 2, again, fraction key 3, which will enter our 2/3. And then if we hit execute, we will see our answer here. Now this has been an interesting result because we have a very similar display and indicates that the answer is 17/12, but uses this little sign in here to indicate a fraction. Right, now let's do some work with subtraction and negative numbers. So I want you to change the setup back to math again. Remember what to do there. We hit Shift, menu to go into setup, and if we then hit F1 this time, we will be back in the math setup. And then hit execute. Then the problem I want you to do is for subtract 2. So what we will do now is put 4, and this is the subtraction sign here, 4 subtract 2, and if you then hit execute, we have 4 take 2 is 2. So that seems alright. Let's have a look at 4 plus negative 2. Trying to add negative 2 to 4. How would we do that, work with negative numbers? Let's have a look. Here's 4 plus, aha, what's this one down here? This little bracket around the negative means the negative number 2. So we're adding on 4 plus the negative of 2, which is this bracketed key down here. So I want you to do that now and hit execute, and we see now 4 plus the negative 2 is 2, which is correct. Now, the important thing here is that the calculator does not accept this sign for subtraction purposes. So let's have a look at, if we do make a mistake and are trying to work out for take 2, let's say we put in 4 and then this negative sign and 2 and hit execute, what now happens to that? The calculator doesn't accept that sign as a subtraction sign, this one down here. It reserves it as a negative for a negative number. So it informs you up here that you've made an error in the calculator language and the form of instruction which the calculator requires, called a syntax error. Okay, so if that happens, it means probably you've chosen the negative sign when you really meant a subtraction sign. Now we want to repeat these calculations in linear setup because the two setups give the same results for this type of calculation. So we won't bother going to that one right now. What I would like you to do now is to work with some powers of numbers. So I want you to hit exit and then enter 2 squared powers of numbers, and to do that with the calculator we go 2 and then we're going to look for this little hat here. Let's do that now. So 2 and then the hat is the power button, and then we'll hit 2 again to do 2 squared. But remember now this button here gives us the power of 2. It's just hiding in there. Okay, so I'd like you to do that now and then hit execute, and we see simple calculation of 2 squared equals 4. What about squaring negative 2? Say we want to square negative 2. So let's enter negative 2 so we know how to do that. There we are. Negative 2. And then we know how to square now, so we'll have that button and the 2 again. So we're squaring the negative of 2. And if you hit execute, what happens then? I think something has gone wrong. Can you see it? The answer here is -4. But a negative number times a negative number always gives a positive. So it shouldn't be -4. When we entered -2, we should have used a bracket so that the calculator didn't just square the 2, but include its negative sign as well. So really, we should have made sure the calculator did that. What the calculator has done is ignored the negative sign, just squared the 2 and kept the negative sign out the front. And that's not what we meant. So let's check it out by using a bracket, then -2 followed by a bracket, and then if we go to squaring it and see what happens. Oh, that's better. And as you can see now, staying in math mode, it shows exactly what has gone on, and the answer is, as we know it should be, a +4. Let's look at raising numbers to powers which are themselves fractions, like the problem 4 raised to the power of 3/2. So I'd like you to hit 4 now in here, then our little hat, the power button, and then 3 divided by 2, so 3 divided by the 2 in here. So that should give us the answer to 4 to the power of 3 divided by 2. I want you to do that and hit execute down here, and we get the answer 8. And that is the correct answer. You can see math mode has positioned the power 4, or 3 divided by 2, up at the top of 4 then. There is another way, of course, of entering 4 to the power of 3/2. I wonder if you can think about it. And of course the answer is to use the fraction key. So let's go 4 raised to the power, and now we can use 3 fraction key, telling the calculator to make a fraction out of 3 fraction key 2. So if we then hit execute, we find we get that 8 again. And here it is here, written as a fraction, sitting up in that power position. So you can see the math setup accepts either form for the fractional power and gives the correct answer. Let's go back and see what linear mode will do for the same sort of things. So I'd like you to go back to setup by, remember now, hitting shift followed by menu to go into setup, and choose F2 and hit execute. So we're now in the linear setup for run mode. I want you to enter 4 squared again, 4 squared, so we're going to go 4, power button, and then squared, and then hit execute, and we get the correct answer again at 16. So you can see that for this basic type of power, the two setups behave in the same way. I would like you, however, to try 4 to the 3/2 by hitting 4, raise to a power, and then use a bracket bracket 3 divided by, and here's our 2 in here, and followed by another bracket. So we're going to make sure in this mode that we're going to do that. So when you have used the bracket around that 3 divided by 2, I'd like you to hit execute, and you can see now it has given the correct answer, but we do need a bracket in that linear mode. The idea there, of course, is that the calculator won't separate and do 4 cubed and then divide the whole thing by 2. Let's try the same calculation using the fraction key. So 4 to the 3 over 2, let's do it now. 4 raised to the power of, let's say now, 3 fraction key 2 should give us 4 to the 3 over 2. So let's hit execute now. Uh-oh, we're in trouble here. We know that that's not the answer there. And so what has the calculator actually done? Can you see what has happened? Looking up here, it's probably quite clear that in linear mode, if you don't bracket, then the calculator says 4 raised to the 3 and then divides it all by 2 afterwards, which is not what we meant. So therefore in linear setup we must always use a bracket around a fractional power. So what we should have done was go 4 raised to the and then 3 fraction key 2 would have been okay. So just keep that in mind, the differences between linear and math setup in our run mode. Let's now do some work with really big and really small numbers and see what the calculator does with them. I'd like you to go back to the setup again, so shift menu, get into the brain of the calculator, into setup, and change back to math mode by hitting F1 followed by execute. And when you've done that, I'd like you now to do this problem with very, very big numbers here. 250,000 times 384,600. Now you need to do that by entering the numbers on the keypad, so we won't go through all of them. 250,000 and so on, and then times and enter the other number in. I'd like you to enter all those numbers and then hit execute, and let's see what we come up with. Oh, what's the calculator done here? That's an interesting answer. Well, because the calculator can only display 10 digits, it's given us an abbreviated form for the answer. This is actually mathematically the standard form in calculator language. The answer display means we have a result which is the number 9.615 multiplied by exponent 10 here, e to the plus 10. What the calculator is saying is that this is our number, but it's got to be, it's a lot bigger than that. It must be multiplied by 10, that's for the e, exponent of 10, and it's plus 10 power. So it's actually huge. We'll need to actually shift the decimal place here 10 places to the right, because multiplying by 10 to the 10 has the effect of making the number much bigger Well, the answer is huge. It's actually, let's see if we can write it down. 9615. That's 3 places. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's how big this number is. If you're writing this answer down yourself in your book, you should always use the standard mathematical form, which is this one up here. We shouldn't use the calculator language of e to the plus 10, like the calculator does, but we can use the regular standard mathematical form of 9.615 by 10 to the 10. Let's do some work with some very small numbers. So I'd like you to calculate this problem here, the answer to this problem. So this one is going to be divided by 1256. That's going to come out to be a fairly small number. So I'd like you to enter on the keypad. So here we can go 0.0 again, 2, 5, 7, divided by, and so on. So can you enter that into the calculator and then hit execute and see what happens now. Oh, the calculator's gone and done it again. It's put the answer in an abbreviated form. Now this time the calculator is saying that this answer is 2.046, etc. We won't write them all down, times e for exponent of 10. So it's 10 to the, minus 5 there. See that there? It's raising 10 to the negative 5. What this means is that you are to divide this number by 10 to the 5th. That would mean shifting the decimal point 5 places to the left. So let's see what that would look like. This would be equal to 0.5 places, so it's going to be 4 more zeros. 2046. Very, very small number. Now the calculator again has used this abbreviated form up here to avoid putting all that across the display. So your answer, if you were to write it down, should be given in this form here, not in the E form that the calculator uses. Now, in calculations of this type, the math and linear setups are the same, so we won't go back and check out the linear setup. So let's move on to a couple of final interesting steps we can do in run mode. I'd like you to imagine that you now want to multiply the answer you've just found by the number 2. Oh, I should have done that first. No, I forgot. So rather than go back and enter this big number again and times by 2, you can go to, what's this now? Shift and the negative key, because look at that. You can access the previous answer, so you don't have to re-enter it, by hitting Shift and the negative key to access answer here. And then if you multiply, once you've done that, multiply by 2 and then hit execute, you can see the calculator has taken the previous answer and doubled it, multiplied by 2, and here is your final result. So that's not a bad little trick to do if you forget to do a multiplication and you don't want to re-enter data again. Now in math setup we can also move back to earlier calculations. So I want you to select jump in here. Jump by hitting F1. So if you do that and now hit or select top by hitting F1 again, you can see that the calculator returns the highlight back up to a previous calculation, and you can go to the top entry from all the calculations. There are also other options there down the bottom, and the first one is bottom, the bottom of your page of calculations, or you can scroll up the page or down the page to look at all your previous entries, and of course these are all accessible using the F keys immediately under them. So I'd like you now to hit exit and return to our original screen. So if you hit exit now, go back to that screen, you can see here also you can choose delete by hitting F2. So I'd like you to do that now. And we have these options here. You have a choice here of deleting last entry or deleting all entries and have a completely clear screen. So again, you would access either of these by the F key below them. Okay, one last very helpful little feature is the backlight feature to help you when lighting is poor. So late at night you can't sleep, you want to do some calculations, you don't want to turn on all the lights, so you just want a calculator light on. So generally you wouldn't need this, it may be helpful at times. It does use quite a bit of battery power, so use it only when really needed. So I'll show you how to get to that. So here we use Shift and Option, and that gives us the backlight in there. Okay, so you can have a bit of fun with that. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope to see you again in one of the further presentations as you learn more about the 9860 Plus. Cheers for now.